Hi, I am Serene. I am 21 years old. The story began when I was 14 years old, and my aunt lived with us. She was old and had missed the marriage train. The truth is that my father prevented her from marrying the man she loved. He was a drunkard and irresponsible, and that is why she hated my father. My aunt would sit all day while my mother did the housework alone. If I came back from school, I would help her. We remained like that until a man in his 50s from another country proposed to my aunt. He came to our country for work. My father asked about him and found him to be a good person. He quickly married my aunt. After his work contract ended, he returned to his country and of course took my aunt with him. My aunt could not bear being away from home, or so she used to say. She always asked my father to allow me to go with her to help her with her absence and accompany her in her solitude. When the summer vacation came, my father allowed me to go with her. I wish I had not gone because she treated me badly. Because she hated my mother and took revenge on me because of what my father did to her. She would assign me all the housework and go out shopping, and at night she would leave me alone and go out with her friends, and she would beat me severely. And under my clothes in a dark room with a bad smell, there was a broken bed in addition to a mirror, part of it black and the other part cracked. And she would throw me the remains of her food. Her husband asked her one day, "Where is Serene? Why doesn't she sit with us at the dinner table?" I took her food to her room. She is sad and misses her family. I wished I could open the door and go towards it to expose her lie and show him the girl she brought to me and the effects of torture on my body. But unfortunately, my smart aunt always locked the door on me with the key and threatened me that if I screamed in the presence of her husband, she would slaughter me. I would spend the night crying while I was facing that cracked mirror. And the days would pass by while I was in the same state, until that day when something came out of the mirror. My body shook. I felt my body temperature rise as if someone was hugging me. I was terrified and almost suffocated. And I started screaming at the top of my voice, and there was no one in the house, and I couldn't get out of the room because my aunt locked it from the outside, so I froze against the door. My heart was beating strongly, and I started to see a shadow moving in the room, and footsteps approaching me, and I started screaming and screaming as he approached. Then he hugged me and said, "Don't be afraid, I'm with you." At that time I fainted, and when I woke up I found myself on the bed sleeping, and silence prevailed over the place. I tried to sleep again, but I couldn't, so I started staring at the place, and saying it was just a nightmare. I went back to sleep with difficulty. The next day I told my aunt what happened, and she looked at me with contempt and said, "You are crazy like your mother. You are imagining here. Continue your work, and don't forget to wash the dishes." And I spent the day as usual busy and hurtful words. And while I was in the kitchen I broke 2 plates. My aunt came quickly and hit me hard until my nose started bleeding. I entered my room crying, until that thing came out of the mirror and came to hug me and started whispering, "I am with you, don't be afraid." So I started screaming, but no one heard my voice. "Don't scream, you will be safe with me." Suddenly my aunt came in and found my face yellow and my body trembling. She said, "What's wrong? There is a ghost in the room. I don't want to stay here, please, Auntie. You are only making this excuse to escape from the house chores. And don't forget I broke 2 plates, so I will double your chores. Anyway, I will go out, and you finish your tasks and prepare dinner quickly, I told her I will do all the house chores, but I beg you not to leave me alone, I am scared. But she didn't hear me and carried her handbag and went out. I stayed alone in the house, avoiding entering that room. Days passed and I saw that ghost coming out of the mirror, and sometimes I saw it in the form of a shadow and other times in the sound of the wind. And I always woke up terrified from my sleep and screaming, and thought about how to get rid of this room. I waited until my aunt's husband sat at the dinner table, and then I told him everything that happened to me. My aunt intervened and interrupted me and said, "You are crazy, don't believe her, this is all she inherited from her crazy mother." And she started laughing and her husband replied angrily, "If only I knew the reason for all this grudge against an innocent girl," I muttered. He said, "Innocent." My aunt's husband took me to a psychiatrist, and when I told him what was happening to me, he didn't believe me and said, "She is imagining all these things because she misses her family, and since you can't travel now, I will prescribe this medicine for her and it will relieve her." I started taking sedatives to relax. But no way, because that option came out to me from the mirror in the form of a man, and sat in front of me. When I cried, I found him hugging me and comforting me, but I was terrified and panicked. My condition deteriorated for the worse and I started crying day and night. My aunt's husband noticed my condition and said, "From today on, you will sleep with us in the room, because you are your father's trust with me, and I must not neglect you." He often shouted at my aunt on my behalf, and her hatred towards me increased. I no longer saw that thing coming out of the mirror because I did not return to that room again. But I started seeing him in the corner of the house watching me and smiling with me, and sometimes I find him in the bathroom. But if I scream and my aunt or her husband comes, they don't see him. So my aunt just says she's crazy, and my aunt's husband comforts me until I calm down. Then he started going out everywhere in front of me and disappearing, and sometimes I feel like he's hugging me or touching my hand or a part of my body. And I started seeing him in my nightmares saying, "You're mine." My aunt's husband noticed my condition deteriorating as I became very thin, so he said to my aunt, "Serene doesn't look well at all. Pack your bags and we'll travel to your country to see her family, so she can be cured by seeing them." And indeed, only a few days passed until I returned to my family. My mother was surprised by my condition as I returned with a pale face and thin body. After I rested, I told my mother everything that happened to me at my aunt's, and how she took advantage of me and treated me like a maid. So she told my father, who chased my aunt and cut off his relationship with her, especially when he saw my condition and the effects of the torture on my body. And he decided to take me to the spiritual healer to treat me. My friends, I hope I didn't scare you with my story. There is still more to my story, it is long as you can see. So I will tell you what remains of it in the second part. Don't forget to cover the mirrors before you go to sleep, and don't look at them while you are crying, and don't look at them after sunset either. See you later.